But being brutally honest, coming at you with another video.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome 49ers legend, Mike Shumann. How's it going, dude?
Going all right. I think that's a stretch, 49er legend, but I appreciate it.
Oh, without a doubt, man. Like, interesting fact that you paved the way for the first ever Super Bowl win. You were a part of the team, but like in some ways, describe yourself what started your NFL career.
Well, you know, as I've had time to sit back and think about it now, I've been retired for a couple of years. I guess you consider me a journeyman player. I was the guy that it was good enough to be a starter, but they were always looking for somebody better. So I would hold that spot till somebody else came along, as it turned out. You know, I started with the Miami Dolphins. They had to let me go because they had a bunch of injuries. And Don Shula calls me in, says, "We're going to let you go." I said, "Well, get me on another team." And he smiled and he goes, "Well, we'll put you through a 24-hour waiver. And if somebody claims you, but we'd like to bring you back." And I said to him, "This is Don Shula." I said, "Well, no, you're Don Shula. And, if you're cutting me, you don't want me. Get me on another team." So now he's kind of laughing. And sure enough, he made a call to Joe Thomas, who was the general manager of the 49ers at the time in 1978. And Joe was with the Dolphins in those undefeated years. And he brought me out, brought out 4 guys, kept 2. I made the team, played the last 10 games of the year. And then Bill Walsh came in the following year. So I knew I had a chance because when I was at Florida State, back in the day, late 70s, everybody was running the wishbone. So San Diego State, Tulsa, and Florida State were the only 3 in the nation throwing the ball. So it put me ahead of the game, and I was ready to play as a rookie because, I had learned how to read defenses, run routes, get open. Whereas in a wishbone offense, you're just blocking all the time. So it's kind of being in the right place at the right time. I became Bill Walsh's first starter as the head coach in the National Football League, along with Freddie Solomon, another Florida guy, University of Tampa. And started there for a couple of years, then injured my knee in 1980. And a young player named Dwight Clark was playing behind me. And I always teased Dwight. He inherited my job. He didn't beat me out. So, and Bill, had drafted Dwight for that reason, So I stuck around, and then I was out most of 80 with my knee, came back halfway through the year. Tampa Bay claimed me because we were playing them on Sunday. And this was kind of a deal back then. They claim you, pick your brain, and then cut you on Monday. So I sat in the stands, watched my old and new team play against each other, got on the plane, flew back with Tampa. I don't think I knew anybody on the team, which is unusual. Finished the year there, and then asked to be traded back to the 49ers, which happened. And that's the year we went to the Super Bowl. Because Bill only had 2. He had Freddie and Dwight, and his 2 backups were Matt Booza from Cal and Mike Wilson, who played at Washington. So he had 2 rookies as backups. He didn't feel confident. He wanted a veteran. He brought me back. And he let go of Matt Booza, and every time I see Matt now, he asks me how his Super Bowl ring's doing. So anyway, and then from there on, played on the Super Bowl team. And then after that, Bill brought in Ronaldo Nehemiah, who was a hurdler, Olympic hurdler. And his Olympic games in 1980 was boycotted. So back then in track and field, you had to win a gold medal to make any money. So Ronaldo decided to come out for football. And I asked Bill, I said, "Don't keep me to the end of training camp and then trade me because I'd have to learn a new offense." "Oh, no worries." So every time I'd come back from running around, he'd be with Ronaldo and say, now, you see how Mike did that? You see how he broke down? He da-da-da. So I did just what I asked him not to do. We played the St. Louis Cardinals at the end of the preseason. Bill said, I'm going to start you and get you ready for the season. And I said to him, what, are you showcasing me for the Cardinals? And he got all kerfluffed. He goes, well, have a good game. So I caught like 7 balls, broke my left thumb in the game. Got a call from their GM, Larry Wilson, the Hall of Fame safety afterwards, and said, we just made a trade for you. And I said, I figured as much. I said, I broke my thumb. And he goes, didn't show up on the x-ray. So I played with a broken thumb the entire year, had to learn an offense in like 2 weeks. And then I finished my career there. Came back, was off a year, and then played 1 year with the Oakland Invaders of the USFL. And that was my 8th year in the pros, and then after that, the league folded, and I was done. So I was good enough to, stick around for 8 years, hold the placemat for Dwight Clark, and then when I went to St. Louis, it was Roy Green. And then the Oakland Invaders, I had Anthony Carter, who went on to play with the Vikings. So I was almost like a player coach with these young players. And, so it was a career that, I was good enough to start for, almost half my career, but yet they were always looking for somebody better. And it used to drive me crazy. I was the possession guy. And I ran a 4.5 40 and had a 36-inch vertical. That's not a possession guy. And when we were in St. Louis, in 82, maybe 83, the year the Raiders won the Super Bowl, I talked to Al Davis before the game, and I said, Al, you need a white guy to move the chains, the possession guy. And he said, we talked in the offseason, didn't work out a deal because Bobby Chandler had just retired. I see Al 20 years later in Oxnard covering the team for ABC. And he goes, Shoo, you're doing a great job on TV, and you were right. I go, what do you mean? He said, I didn't get a white guy to move the chains, and we haven't been back to the Super Bowl since.
Ooh.
So, steel trap, 25 years later. You had Freddie B, Mike Ciani, then Bobby Chandler, anyway, it was kind of Al's, possession guy, speed guy. And I'll never forget that. I couldn't believe he remembered that 25 years later.
If he remembers something like that a long time, that speaks volumes about you.
Well, it's a little respect towards me. And then he was always a big fan of mine. And I followed Biletnikoff at Florida State. It's 10 years later, and it kind of ruined my life. As I told Freddie, Bobby Bowden was his receiver coach back in the mid-'60s, and then Bobby went off to West Virginia, came back to Florida State, and I had him my last year, and he compared me to him. He told all the scouts he's just like, Freddie B. And how do you follow Freddie Biletnikoff? Super Bowl MVP, one of the greatest guys ever to play the game. So it was big shoes to fill, and did the best I could. And so
they named it.
Had an 8-year pro career, got a Super Bowl ring, and set me up for a 30-year career in broadcasting afterwards. So I can't complain.
Well, they named a trophy after him in college, the Biletnikoff Award, which is legendary.
Oh yes, and I'm a voter on the Biletnikoff Award. So anyway, I had a good career. Most of it was San Francisco, and there's nothing like winning a Super Bowl, obviously, but nothing like the first time you do anything. And I know you've had Randy Cross on your show. Randy and I were teammates, and we talk about it all the time. I think Randy got 3 rings. And there's just nothing like the first time. It's like those Dolphin teams, that undefeated team. They don't want anybody to go undefeated, because they want to be the only team. It's, and the Niners, like last week against Philly, I'm pulling for them. I talked to a couple of teammates about this, and they kind of felt the same way. And you want them to go because you play for the team, and, you know what it's like, how much it takes to get there. But the more times they win, the less times they remember the old ones, especially the first one, because it's been 40 years now since that one.
Yeah, the first one's always has the first memories.
Yeah, and last year was the 40th anniversary of it. And they honored the 2013 team that Jim Harbaugh took to the Super Bowl and lost. So I think all of us on that first team were a little disappointed that 40 years later, they didn't honor the team. Because, you get to 50, half of us are going to be dead. So.
Yeah, especially the way how they remember all of that, because they all started with the catch. and you were the foundation. Like you were like the one that you were talking about that you were getting replaced, and you hated that word because you kept making the most out of it. So I guess you were that designated guy that wanted to replace the guy.
Well, it's funny. Dwight and I were good friends, and most teams, like I said, they only kept one possession receiver, and we were one of the few that had two. And then that last drive, we were kind of signaling each other to go in the game. So 2 plays before the catch, we ran the same play on the left side of the field with Freddie Solomon, and Joe had Freddie wide open, 10 yards away, and overthrew him like 10 feet. Joe had probably one of his worst games. We had 6 turnovers in that game. I know you weren't even alive, but we had 3 picks, 3 lost fumbles. You don't win an NFC championship game with 6 turnovers. So after we missed it, Bill called a sweep to Linville Elliott and then called the catch play again to the other side. So Dwight ran in the game, and I didn't see a signal or anything, so I ran off. And sure enough, he makes the catch, heard around the world, probably the most iconic catch in the history of the playoffs. And he passed away, 3 or 4 years ago with ALS. And I was going down to Capitola every Tuesday to have lunch with him. A bunch of us would go down. And one day, I could tell something was bugging him. He says, I got to tell you something. I said, what? And he says, on the catch. And he said, I just heard Bill call the play, and I just ran in the game. I wasn't told to go in. I just ran in the game. And he goes, I felt guilty about it all these years. That could have been you. And I said, you know what, Dwight? Fate has a way of working itself out. If it had been me, I might not have made the catch. I might not have had a 30-year career in broadcasting. As a result, they'd have ran me out of town. So everything worked out for the best, you know. So, but it was just weighing on him all those years, and he was so sweet. We were roommates, and you know, to kind of get it off his chest, you know, before he moved on. So, great player, and I made the first catch in that game. And when I do speaking engagements, I say, everybody remember the catch? Everybody goes crazy. Anybody remember who made the first catch in that game? Nobody. You know, so I said, well, you know, if I'd have dropped that, Joe could have had a horrible game. He said, well, he had 6 turnovers, so it couldn't gotten any worse. So anyway, there was nothing like it. You know, you win that game the way we did, and if Eric Wright doesn't tackle Drew Pearson, which was now a horse collar, we lose the game. All they had to do was kick a 30-yard field goal, and they win 29-28, I think it was, or 30-28. So we can thank Eric Wright. We can thank Dwight Clark, and, of course, Bill Wallace for what he brought to the table.
For sure. Let me come back and forth because I'm having some issues with my speaker thing. Let me go quickly. Be right there.
No worries.
Okay, so had to check on the Wi-Fi issue. It been kind of acting weird, but since it's normal now, but is something kind of echoing on your team?
I don't hear any echo. Is it too loud?
Oh, okay. All right, I think it's normal now.
Okay.
Because I had to double check it and make sure. Oh, here's a familiar face that was on your show last year. John Jay. He was on your show last year.
Oh, yes, John Jay.
Yeah, great dude. Awesome guy. Yeah, you know, there's always a purpose in your career. You know, if it wasn't for what happened, man, you said you wouldn't have a 30-year career in broadcast. So it had to be a blessing to have whatever happens for the reason, you know?
Well, back then, ESPN, I played, 78 to 85, and ESPN was only 5 years old then. So they didn't have all their programming and this, that, and the other. So back in the day, if you wanted to get into broadcasting, you just stayed in the market where you played and, you know, continue your career there. And, you know, I went to St. Louis, I went to Tampa, but I always came back and lived in San Francisco because that's where my home was. So I was doing radio gigs and some TV with Wayne Walker while I was playing, and I segued into it and just got lucky. I was at KFOG Radio, and then we bought KNBR. And so I was doing morning drive on KNBR and KFOG, AM and FM. I was doing top and bottom of the hour, 15 and 45. I was like a hamster in a wheel running back and forth in the studio. And and then went over to KGO radio doing the pregame with the 49ers sideline and postgame. And the news director up at KGO Television had heard me, asked me if I wanted to do some TV. So I started weekends there. I did 25 years there, 8 years in radio. So I had a pretty good career I can't complain about. 8 years of football, Super Bowl ring, and 30 years in broadcasting. So I told my old man I could do two things well: catch a football and talk trash. And I made a living at both.
I mean, you had to have something to enjoy about.
Yes. So, because once you get, in high school, you're the best player. Guys that make it in the NFL. College, you're still the best player. But then when you get to the NFL, everybody's as good as or better than you. You got your superstars, but that's a really small group. So it's kind of alarming because you're kind of cruising through high school, you're cruising through college, and you get to the pros, and you're like, oh my goodness. The speed of the game is like nothing else you've ever seen. First time I came off the line of the preseason game in Miami, everybody was going so fast, I literally stopped in my tracks. I just went, oh my God, because we were in 3-point stance back then. So I came up and I was like, Jesus Christ. So it was intimidating for the first time in most pros' careers. Because you get up there and you're like, wow, there's a lot of talent here. And they're only keeping only 4 guys at my position. Now they keep 7, I think. And only 1 possession guy. So back then, that was only 28 jobs in the whole world for players like myself. So it was a tough road to hoe, and you had to put your head down and do nothing but focus on that. You had no time for anything else. So,
Yeah.
Very fortunate, I'll just say that.
Like 7 receivers in today's NFL. You have 2 guys who would be on special teams mostly, and then those other 5 guys can go in.
Well, the slot position would have been perfect for me. And I always tease Julian Edelman. I said, dude, you couldn't have played back in my time. He goes, what do you mean? You weren't fast enough to play outside. You're perfect in the slot. You just go right or left, and you're really not running routes. Today's game is more getting to an area. Yeah, you could do a little bend or this, that, and the other, but we had more one-on-one back then where you had to beat somebody with your route. Now you're just getting to an area and turning up and showing your quarterback where you are. So whole different game. Used to drive Freddie and I crazy. Freddie ended up being my coach with the Invaders. And Anthony Carter, bless his heart, couldn't run a route to save his life. At Michigan, they just threw him a quick slant and let him run. So we're watching him in practice, and we're trying to teach him and this, that, and the other. We get in the game, and Freddie's going, I don't know what everybody sees in this guy. We get in the game, some ball, Bobby Hebert threw a ball up, and looked like nobody had a chance. Anthony Carter shows up out of nowhere, jumps about 8 feet in the air and makes a catch. Freddie and I look at each other and go, he's a gamer. He doesn't like to practice, but he plays in the games, So it was kind of fun being a player coach then. But coaches didn't make that much dough back then. Bill was making $150,000 as a head coach. Now you're making close to 15 or 20 million. So assistants were making 50. Your coordinators are making, 75. So it's a different game. And once you got out, you kind of had to make that decision. I decided to get into broadcasting. So, and there it went.
I mean, it works for the better.
Yes.
Oh, here's a good question. Can you still run routes?
My left knee needs to be replaced. I tore my posterior cruciate, and I'm putting it off until I absolutely have to. So I play in the park every now and then, but I'm usually playing more quarterback, than I am wide receiver. So I always joke I could give you about 5 good routes, and that would be it if I was in a game. So, and, it's 67 years old. So.
Yeah, at that point, there's no point of that. But I guess that was a little sarcastic joke on his part.
Yeah.
Speaking of the quarterback issues, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo will be back next year?
Well, Kyle said no yesterday or the day before in his press conference. Do you see any situation where Jimmy Beck goes no? He goes, well, you said that last year. And last year, they got lucky. They treated Jimmy like a dog. Right? Jimmy saw it coming, got that shoulder surgery, so he had to hang around. They told him to work out on his own. You're not part of this team. You're not in the meetings, nothing. All right. And, all he did was take him to the Super Bowl. And so then Trey Lance, the anointed one, gets hurt. They had no idea about Brock, so they had to bring Jimmy back. So they were lucky, and of course the 49ers are going to play it like, oh, yeah, well, we had that in the plans anyway. No, they didn't. So they got lucky. Jimmy took him as far as he could, got hurt, and then Brock became, a fairy tale story. And I've seen it happen, and I hope it doesn't, where somebody will come in, have a great run of a half a year or a year, get injured, and you never hear them again. And I'm hoping that's not going to happen to Brock. He's, deciding whether to have surgery or not. But he was perfect for the offense, and he was a game manager and didn't have the strongest arm. But starting 4 years in college put him ahead of everybody else because just the repetitions. Whereas Trey Lance only started 1 full year in college, so he everything he was seeing in the NFL, he just hadn't seen. Whereas Brock has seen it just at a little higher speed. And that's what made him so good in the offense. And he was on the same wavelength as Kyle. And they were hoping this was the guy going into next year. Now we're back to square one. Who's going to be the guy? Is it going to be Trey, who you gave up, 2 or 3 number 1 picks for? And I think they were thinking about trading him, maybe to Tennessee, where their assistant GM went, and then going with Brock. Now you got to keep these two. You got them for probably under $10 million, and just hope they can stay healthy, and we'll see what happens from there. But Brock just turned out to be a godsend for this offense. But here we are, and it'll be year 7 next year for Kyle Shanahan, and he still doesn't have his quarterback situation worked out. And there was talk of Tom Brady coming for 1 more year. Tom retires yesterday or the day before, and I don't think Kyle would have brought him out anyway. Kyle doesn't want anybody bigger than him on that team. And I'm not saying it's ego, but Brady would want to be involved in the offense. He'd want to be, have some things his way. Kyle thinks, and Bill Walsh was the same way. He thinks what he calls is going to work. So he didn't have a whole lot of options. Joe didn't have a whole lot of options to audible out of. So they're very similar in that way, Kyle and Bill Walsh. So, and I'll say 90% of the time, what Kyle calls is working. So, but the problem with this offense, it's a run-based offense, a lot of play-action pass, which means it takes longer to develop, which means the potential for your quarterback taking more hits goes up. And I think that's why you see a lot of these quarterbacks getting hurt in this offense, because nobody's been able to stay healthy. It's been unbelievable, but it's going to be interesting. He sounds like he's going to go with Trey and Brock next year. Hope Brock's healthy and go from there. Tommy John surgery, though, you never know. It's different for an NFL player because you use more elbow than a baseball player. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
He's got 6 months to recover.
Well, who do you like? Do you like Trey? Do you like Brock? Do you like Jimmy?
I just like whoever's the winner.
Yeah, in a way, you almost keep Jimmy around because he already knows the offense. You could cut him, but Jimmy wants to go somewhere. If they could trade for him, they'd do it. But at this point, I don't think he's got a whole lot of trade value, with his injuries. And he'd be good maybe in Las Vegas with McDaniel, who he played with in New England. He could go to Tampa, where Brady's retired. So I don't know. It's interesting to see what other fans think about Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback. As well as I do, how 49er fans approach it. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. I'll just say that. And it's the key to your offense.
He's a proven winner, so he's done everything with our offense. He knows everything, but Shanahan ruled that out, so I don't know who to trust.
But, you got McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk. Ayuk could be gone. If I'm Ayuk, Brandon, I ask to be traded. He's like the 4th or 5th choice in that offense. And that guy could go somewhere where they throw the ball every down and catch 120 balls a year. He's got that kind of durability. He runs the best routes on the team. Then probably Justin Jefferson. Debo probably runs the worst routes, if you ask me, as a wide receiver. I think Christian McCaffrey runs better wide receiver routes than Debo. Debo's a quick screen guy, a jet sweep, or a slant, and let him run out to the catch. So, but they got so much talent on this team. Next 2 years, that window is going to close for the Super Bowl. So they got to find the guy at quarterback that can get the ball to the skill positions,
or at least get some lead protection.
Well, that'd be next. Trent Williams, is he going to retire? The right tackle, McGlinchey, he's a free agent. He could be gone. You need a center. I think they've got a young kid named Poe on the practice squad who played really well this year, just in practice, and I think he might be the future. You need maybe a cornerback, another outside edge rusher to take the pressure off Bosa. Bosa had 60% of their sacks. Nobody else had double-digit sacks. Philadelphia Eagles had 4 guys with double-digit sacks. And you can see the pressure they were putting on Purdy. And Purdy steps up in the pocket on that play he got hurt on. He probably is not going to get hurt. These are some of those rookie mistakes that weren't really showing up while he was playing so well. But just little things like that. Because of he's only 6 feet tall, if that. So you rush him up the middle, he can't really see. That's why he would always peel out to the right or left to get some more vision downfield. So, but I never seen anything like it. He ran around till he found somebody open. Pete Carroll compared him to Fran Tarkington after the Seattle playoff game. Nobody knew who Fran Tarkington was. And when I thought about it, Fran did. He just ran around till somebody was open. He never tried to cross the line of scrimmage. And I think Brock only did that like maybe 3 times. So he was fun to watch. I hope he's healthy when he comes back. And I think he and Trey will be a good 1-2 punch, to where you can get them both some reps. And, Trey could be the long-term future. But he's got to get reps. We're in year, 4 with him now?
Year 3.
Still not ready.
Yeah, it's tough. But Purdy looks ready. Like when it comes to that offense, the way he played at Iowa State, he just seems to have it. And usually those 4-year experience does pay dividends. And he's played in the bigger environments. And like you said it best, if we can get the line fixed up from here, like, okay, Trent Williams, he is kind of uncertain about his future. So that's concerning for us Niner fans to say who's going to protect our quarterback. It doesn't matter if it's Trey Lance or if it's Brock Purdy. Or let's just say hypothetically if it's Derek Carr, if we somehow, but it's unlikely. But let's say if we were to get him, we would have to protect our quarterback anyways. So it don't matter who we got at quarterback. So center is another position, but I think Brendo kind of seems like an adequate starter, but maybe bringing him back on a cheaper deal wouldn't be the worst case scenario.
Well, that's going to be an issue with them too, is the cap.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're going to stay away. Do you bring in a veteran quarterback in case these 2 young kids get hurt? And Jimmy would be that guy, but I think they want to separate from Jimmy, and they know they got lucky last year. Kyle almost wants to prove he can do it without Jimmy. So,
and that's his ego.
He's a different kind of cat. I'll just say that, Kyle. So, and he's, like Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse for almost 2 years before he, finally broke out. And all sports are like this. You got to play better than your attitude. Then they'll keep you. And I think that's what Brandon did. He came in with a little attitude. Nobody knew how to read him. Put him in a doghouse, and the guys turned out to be a player. So it'll be interesting. Now, like I say, the Super Bowl window's closing, and now we need a defensive coordinator. And Vic Fangio likes a 3-4, who's a consultant with the 49ers, and they run a 4-3. And Kyle said yesterday he doesn't want to change the defensive scheme. Now, would Vic be able to do that? I don't think so. And tell you the truth, I think Vic's a little older, and I'm not sure a younger team like this would react to him. And D'Amico has had all that energy and the youth. He played the game. And I think they're thinking about the defensive lineman coach. I can't think of his name right now, but they were thinking about offering him.
Kosarek?
Yes. And he talked to Grant yesterday, Cohen. He said, he's more of a defensive line guy. He's not sure he wants the coordinator job, which is unusual to hear. But some guys are like that. Tom Selleck was like that. So a lot of holes, a lot of free agents, and but they have a core that is Super Bowl ready, and we saw that all throughout the year.
Yeah.
So, I was almost hoping, like we were 1-2 at the beginning of that first Super Bowl season. We won 9 straight, and then lost to Cleveland of all teams late in the year. But it was a wake-up call for us, like, oh, maybe we're not as good as we think. And the Niners have won 10 straight. I almost wish they would have lost that Raider game, for instance. They gave up 500 yards of offense to them. And kind of a little bit of a wake-up call. It wouldn't have mattered as it turned out because Purdy got hurt and Johnson got hurt. Josh Johnson got hurt. But it's tough to win 14 straight games to win a Super Bowl, which is what they would have had to do. So Josh Johnson, he's not a bad quarterback, and you get him cheap, so he might be a guy they keep on the roster just to have that veteran presence. So it'll be interesting. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks out there. Kind of second quarterbacks out there this year. So, but I think Kyle's mind's made up. Purdy, go ahead and get that surgery, can heal up, and Trey Lance, he'll go with those two and he'll be successful.
Yeah, the only difference from last year is Jimmy's not under contract this time, so he's a free agent for sure.
Nah, he's gone, and I think at this point it's not even try to trade him. If they can get something, great, but Jimmy's going to determine where he wants to go. So because there's teams that need, Vegas, Tampa, the Jets, there's a lot of teams, the Colts, that need, a veteran quarterback. The Houston Texans,
they might bring him.
Yeah, D'Amico's going there, and D'Amico's going to take some players. So don't be surprised there. I mean,
Jimmy Ward.
Yeah, Jimmy's gone. He had a great quote yesterday. He went to Kyle and told him when he was replaced by who's the young safety?
Deshaun Gibson.
No, the other one.
Hufanga?
Yeah. And he said, I don't want to play nickel. And Kyle said to him, so you want to ride the bench? And Jimmy was like, oh, my God, that's so cold-blooded. But that's the way Kyle is. This is a business. They made their decision on Hufanga. And Jimmy, did what he could. He did a great job playing nickel. He's not a cornerback. And you play nickel back, you got to be a cornerback to cover skills. So Jimmy will probably go to Houston, maybe one of those linebackers. I think we got the best group of linebackers in the league. There's some players that are going to go and follow D'Amico, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I think so too. Because they know the
whoever gets the defensive coordinator is going to bring in some of his players. So
most of the guys who know the system.
Yeah, and most, every year is a different roster. That's why, you want to win it with the guys you have. Like last year, they wanted to win it. They were there. And to tell you the truth, I think Brock stays healthy. I think they beat Philadelphia. I really do. And on to the Super Bowl. So it's tough, especially for an older player like Trent Williams. I'm not sure he has a ring. So it's the finality of the playoffs. When it's over, it's over. And not only for players, coaches, and management, for we fans, you got, oh, God, we got 200 days now until football starts again. So it's just kind of tough the way it ends like that when you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, if it wasn't for the Purdy injury, I think we'd still be in this game. But it happens. Once you lose your key piece of that offense, man, that's a wrap.
Well, and when Josh got in there, I thought he got a little conservative too. And I just think he should have opened it up. And, it was going to be hard to run on that defense. And I know they got a great pass rush too, but Purdy gets the ball out quick. And so, and he got better as he went along. There's a lot of plays where if he'd have got it out quicker, it'd have been a touchdown. It was a completion, but it was, it's things he just didn't pick up quick enough because he hadn't played enough at this level. So they were real subtle, his rookie mistakes. But because he had so much success, everybody overlooked that. But as a former player, you see those and, that could catch up with him. That might be, so. But I think I agree with you. Had he stayed healthy, I think that it was been a heck of a game because, that was a second drive, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
7-7 game, I think, so, and then it just all fell apart, so, because that happened to us in 78. All our quarterbacks got hurt. DeBerg, Scott Bull, Bruce Threadgill was a quarterback in college, moved him to safety. He had a cast on his hand, cut it off, threw 2 interceptions. Fred O'Connor, the interim head coach, comes over to the sideline and goes, who wants to play quarterback? I'm looking around, I go, is this the NFL? And Freddie Solomon had played quarterback at University of Tampa. And he'd dying to play, but he wouldn't, say anything. So I said, Freddie will do it. Let's go. Freddie's ready. And so we didn't even call plays in the huddle. He just would either call a run or a pass and just run around until somebody got open. So but he got to live out his dream and play quarterback for one game. So it wasn't unprecedented when it happened, because you saw Juice getting warmed up, McCaffrey getting warmed up for a quarterback, going over plays. And the NFL looks like a clown to be in the NFC conference game, and you got to play somebody out of position at quarterback. So they got to bring that rule back where you can dress a third quarterback. If it's only 45 players, make it 46. So the 49ers had their best chance to beat the Eagles. Without a real quarterback, they didn't.
No, they didn't. I mean, there was even a chance that McCaffrey would have been the quarterback out there.
Yeah, exactly. I think Juice, the fullback, is actually the alternative quarterback. So it's just a damn shame, to get that far and have your position run out due to injury. 4 quarterbacks in 1 year. I'm not sure I've ever seen that.
I think the closest one I've seen was maybe the Cardinals in 2015, but that was 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah, so 4 quarterbacks. And like I said, with that play action, takes longer to develop. If you're not good in the pocket, you're going to get hurt, and so that's what we've seen a lot with 49er quarterbacks, unfortunately.
I just think Kyle needs to change the protections better.
Yeah, there's some truth to that too. Because with Trey, what's he doing running between tackles? Have him run outside, like everybody else does with their quarterbacks. So in some ways, a lot of people are saying Kyle didn't want Trey. He wanted Kirk Cousins. He likes that old school Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady, just drop back passers, and you can't do it anymore. Defenses are too fast. You got Brady threw it 60 times, but he gets the ball off in 2 seconds. People don't want to hear it, but Brady couldn't have played back in the day. He would have taken a beating like no other. 6'4", a huge target, can't move. Joe took a beating at 6'2", 190.
And he was tough.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but Tom could not have played in the 80s. So it was just a different game. Now they protect the quarterback and the wide receivers and the running backs. So we old schoolers are like, what is this, a participation trophy league now?
Yeah. I mean, you guys came from winning Super Bowl, so it had to be a different era, but we're coming up short of the stick for the last decade, man.
Well, it's what last time. Let's see. Last time we won a Super Bowl at '94, went in 2013 and 19. So we've been to 7 or 6 or so. 4, 5, 6, 7 Super Bowls. Yeah. So Jerry Jones was saying the other day, we haven't won a Super Bowl since '95, but the Niners haven't won since '94. Trying to make somebody else look as bad as him. So. Yeah. And George Seifert got fired after a 12-win season. Mariucci got fired after an 11-win season. The question is, Jed, is he going to keep Kyle around? How many more years do you give him to figure out his quarterback position? He's gone to 3 or 4 NFC Championship games. So I think you keep Kyle. I would just blow all that away. He's our coach for next year. And because there's some PTSD with those coaches in between. Tom Sulo, Chip Kelly. I can't even remember the other 2.
I mean, there was Dennis
Erickson. There was 10 years of just, horrible choices. So Kyle will be back, but a lot of moves to be made. Purdy needs to hurry up and figure out what he wants to do. If he's going to have surgery, you got to get it done now.
Get it done immediately.
And get him back as soon as possible. They say 6 to 9 months. That takes you into the season. So, and if that's the case, now he's got to find another quarterback. So do you start with Trey again and make Jimmy the backup? Because Jimmy will play on a lesser salary.
At this point, he has to, because his value would have been up if it wasn't for the injury, but Purdy outperformed it, so that kind of hurts his value a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah, like his value was like at one point when he came off of the injury from Trey Lance, it could have skyrocketed him some top dollars, but after Brock Purdy came out of that performance, man, that just really kind of devalued a little bit of Jimmy. But I don't know how he's going to get the market. I don't know what they're going to give him. So it'd be interesting.
Well, get grade is 15 to 25 now for lesser, second tier quarterbacks, we'll call it. Nobody deserves $50 million to play quarterback. Aaron Rodgers, who else is up there? I can't think of it. But anyway, it's too much of your cap. And I think Kyle loved the fact that he could do it with Purdy, making, his rookie salary of whatever it is, $800,000, so it's almost making general managers and head coaches look at the fact that should we be paying this much money to quarterbacks when you can find somebody like Brock Purdy, pay him his rookie salary, use him for 5 years. And then this is a little problem with the rookie contracts too, especially like a running back. You come into your 5th year to finally get paid and you're done. They've just worn you out. I'm surprised the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, they agreed on that. They should be more like 3-year deals, and then get paid, because the average length of a career is only 4 years in the NFL, so I think that's what's shown a lot of people too, that, hey, maybe you can. And it's telling a lot of college kids to stay in college and continue to play, because the more reps you get, the better the more prepared you'll be to play in the NFL.
I mean, it matters with the experience, because Brock Purdy played 4 years at Iowa State. And I'm thinking if the Niners are not going to go with a veteran quarterback, maybe go in the draft, like get a late round quarterback. Maybe you can develop kind of like what you did with Brock Purdy. Maybe you take a flyer on a kid that nobody's paying attention to. Maybe he's under the radar. Maybe he fits the system. Maybe that would be exactly what Kyle goes to.
I'm not sure if Trey was that guy. Trey only played 1 year, but everybody was talking about him. He's got a lot of upside, potential. And what you look at a modern day quarterback, two tiers where you can run the ball and you can throw the ball. Because he threw some darts. You watch Brock's throw. Brock's got to put loft on his balls because his arm's not strong enough. Even for like a 15 to 20 yard end, he's throwing it up where he can't throw it on a line because his arm wasn't strong enough. So, but because of that, he knows his limitations. He gets the ball off early. And that's what you want as a wide receiver. You want to turn around and see the ball coming, not turn around and go, where's the ball? But that's potential. But he's got a lot of young players. I think, in my opinion, he'll go for a veteran quarterback. Some Blaine Gabbert type guy that you can pay minimum and be happy to still be around in case Purdy's not ready.
Or a Cooper Rush.
Oh, yes, the Cowboy quarterback. Yeah, somebody like him. He's another guy, went undefeated. Was he a rookie? I'm not sure.
No, he's been around a while.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah, there's a guy, good call. So there's people out there and willing to take less to stay active, because as you get older and you get away from the game for a couple of years, nobody's coming back to you. It's a NFL, not for long. It's just that's the way the business is. So you just want to stay healthy, play the best you can, contribute how you can, and just hope you end up with a roster that's got some success. So. Because we were 2-14, 78, 2-14, 79, 5-6, and then 13-3 to win the Super Bowl 4 years later. So Bill was 3 years in, and Kyle did the same thing. His third year, he went to the Super Bowl. So a lot of things alike, except for the age. Bill was 48, I think, when he got his first job. And Kyle's a little nepotism with his dad, but I got in the door in broadcasting because I was an NFL player. So the door opens for you, but you still have to prove you can do it. I think Kyle's done that.
Yeah, he's proven otherwise with a good track record. It's just players can't stay healthy.
Right. And I think a lot of that too, but although the Niners have had more issues than anybody, they don't hit in practice anymore. We used to hit on Wednesday, Thursday. Full pads. Because you can't simulate a game unless you get hit. But now, we're averaging 75,000 per player back when I played. Nothing. You can find anybody on the streets to replace me. But now if you're paying a guy, 10, 15, 20 million dollars, you don't want to get him hurt in practice. So that's your investment will be shot. So I think that's a little bit of the problem with the injuries and the poor tackling you see with teams because they just don't hit. They don't tackle in practice. So I think that lends a lot to it. I'm not sure there's any way around it. You just got to make sure your depth is good because, it's a league now with a lot of injuries, especially when you're not hitting the quarterbacks, you're not hitting the wide receivers, you're not hitting the running backs like you used to be able to. So it makes it even, more kind of perplexing that, well, why are these guys all getting hurt? So you just have to have good depth. And that's what Kyle didn't have initially, but now he's got the kind of players he wants. Now he's always got good depth. So it seems like anybody goes down, they're ready to go. It doesn't matter. Who's next? Next man up. So I give him and John Lynch a lot of credit for that. They're doing what they want to do. They're playing old school football of pounding the ball and play action. And a defense that's just very aggressive. It's like a boxing match. The guy's giving you a bunch of body punches. About the 10th round, you're dead. And that's what the Niners defense did to most opposing offenses. They were just shot by the fourth quarter. So with that speed, like Fred Warner, I've never seen anybody run sideline to sideline like he does. Guy's incredible.
And he can cover too.
Dude, he's like a safety playing linebacker in the middle. It's just phenomenal. So the game's changed. It's a lot faster. Schemes, and it's really just finding places to get open, finding holes, creating seams. So it's changed a lot. The basis of football is still the same, blocking, tackling, special teams, but it has progressed to where guys like me don't recognize it. We only had 2 wide receivers, but I played a tight end and a fullback. So a slot formation was me going over to the other side. That was it. So now you got 4 wideouts, 5 wideouts. So it's a lot different game. You got to have a lot more speed on defense. You got 5 or 6 DBs now. So it's going to be interesting. So he's got to find a coordinator. He's got to find some players, in the weak positions we talked about. Got to find some assistant coaches because I bet D'Amico is going to take some assistant coaches.
Take a few of them with you.
So I think they've gotten more draft choices from the coaches he's lost in the last 3 years than players.
Yeah.
He's got 5 third-round draft choices from coaches that went away. So
it's crazy how we get all these guys to get higher and we get those third-round picks out of it. It's
because he's doing a good job with his coaching staff, and then replacing them with, as good a coaches. So it was just that after having that run, it was just sad to see it end like it did. It was almost too good to be true what Brock Purdy was doing. For instance, I like to bet on football, and I quit betting on the Niners because I just kept thinking to myself, this kid's going to have a meltdown here eventually. And he didn't. He had a tough, couple halves. That first half against Seattle in the playoffs, against Dallas in the first half, he looked shaky. Dallas did what every team should do against him. Stuff the run and make Brock Purdy beat you. And they did it, but they just got beat. Their offense didn't show up. So anyway, so I just wasn't sure what was going to happen to the kid. And I hated to see the way it went down. Because when he got hit, the first thing I thought, oh, my God, his elbow.
That's going to take away the strength a little bit with the Tommy John surgery. That's a little scary for the arm.
Yeah, it'll be stronger eventually, like every injury, but you're never the same. I was never I didn't have major injury in high school or college. And then once you get that major injury, a knee, you're really never the same. So it's you come back, yeah. But in the back of your mind, you're always thinking something's going on.
And that's what happens. You just think about it and you're mentally just not there because of the way the setback is,
Well, especially the first game back. So that makes it tough. I'd blown out my posterior cruciate and missed first half of the 80 season. And what I talked about, they tried to sneak me through waivers on Thursday, and with 5 minutes left, the Bucs claimed me. So I got there, and Boyd Dowler, the great receiver from Green Bay, was the coach, and he said, well, you won't play here. You don't know the offense. You won't play in this game. I go, Boyd, you got like 8 plays. It was the most simplistic offense I've ever seen, as it coming from Bill Walsh's offense. So I get in the game, and we're playing the New York Giants. The safety was a teammate of mine at Florida State, Gary Wolford. Played with the Niners, too. And I'd run this post corner on Gary probably 100 times between practice and college and the pros. So I came in, looked him right in the face, smiled for a little bit, broke out, and there's no ball. I go, where's the ball? And it was Doug Williams. And Doug had a cannon. All of a sudden, he throws it. I'm making touchdown catch. Turned out to be the game winning. So I came back to San Francisco in the offseason, and the Tampa Bay Booster Club gave me a big trophy. Got it over here. Offensive play of the year for that one touchdown catch. And my locker's next to Doug's, and Doug sees it and he goes, ain't that a thing? I throw 400 touchdowns, you catch one, and they give you a trophy. You think they're dying for a white boy around here or what? And it was all time. Because Doug was black. All our skill positions were black. I was the only white guy in the skill position. So, and to this day, when I see Doug, we still tell the story. We laugh about it. So, and I was really happy to see him go win a Super Bowl. So, I mean,
he was gifted too, but he was just on a bad team. And then when he went to a good team, he won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. So, it'll be interesting though. And like I say, the finality of a playoff loss is so sudden. You're like, oh, you're not prepared for it. You go, oh, no, my 49er season's over. I still got a Super Bowl to watch. And the USFL and Arena are coming back. But it's just a long wait. So now we're waiting to start seeing the offseason moves. What's Purdy going to do? All right, he decides, then you go from here, you go to there. They're going to sign this. Who's going to be the defensive coordinator? So a lot of stuff we can start following here, and it makes it unique. I guess all pro sports are like that. You don't have the same roster every year. So,
they all change.
Right.
Different coaching staffs, different players, and even like the change of the head coach can happen every now and then.
Well, it was funny too because once I got into broadcasting, I had a great run. 3 World Series with the Giants. 3 NBA titles with the Warriors. Sharks went to Stanley Cup once. 49ers went to 4 more Super Bowls after me. I played in one, covered all 4 of the other, or 5 or 6 of the others. So as a broadcaster, former player, you've got an insight and a world champion. So I could relate to all of them. Bruce Bochy and I were freshmen together at Florida State. So I had that connection to him. Buster Posey was a Seminole. Had that connection. Warriors were on ABC. I traveled with them. Had a blast watching that. So it was fun to relive it, and it took me back every time one of these teams won it. And you see what it's like. It's the same thing to do it as a team, and it's just a different sport. You see. So it's very rewarding for me in that sense. And I think the players on these teams, even though I might not have known their sport as well inside out as I did football, they knew I'd been there before. So it made it easier to talk and share it with them, which was there was nothing like it. The Bay Area, in the last 30 years, has had a better run in all sports maybe than any city in the United States, right?
Baseball, the popularity, yeah.
Yeah, just think about all the world championships. 3 with the Giants, 4 with the Warriors now. Niners, this, that, and the other. Raiders won a couple. So it was just there was nothing like it. I'll just say that. So for Bay Area sports fans who are finicky, as you know, right, and social media is just blown it all up. It's created a whole new venue for guys like yourself. You could talk with other guys, former players, current players, and you can be involved in it almost like you were. Twitter allows that. A lot of knuckleheads out there, as you know, but there are people, like yourself and know the game. And so it's created a lot more opportunities for a lot of different people, not just broadcasters. So I think it's great. I'm glad I'm not in sportscasting now, because you got to put something on Twitter. Say you can watch the full thing later tonight at 6, and everybody's already seen the whole interview on Twitter or Facebook or somewhere else. So that's why nobody's watching TV anymore. You get your information instantaneous. I mean, if you got to wait 15 seconds for somebody to feed you something, you're not waiting. It's a short attention span theater now, and it's a whole different world.
Yeah, a lot different then because before we didn't have those other content creators do that. You had just like broadcast workers and all that other sports stuff people before.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of like evolving more. Like you have people like me and other people that can do this platform. Because if it was 10 or maybe about 20 years ago or back then, it was a lot difficult. Like
Nothing.
different kind.
You had to wait for your 5 and 6 o'clock news. You know?
Yeah, TV was a thing, and I think TV is becoming less popular. Like Netflix is a thing that people go on to. They don't go to the movies to go buy movies. They go get Netflix or other stuff, and it's just changed over the years. Like I don't even think people go shopping mall nowadays. It's like you have to go online.
No, and COVID really put a dent in that. But now television news might stick around, but TV sports will go away. I mean, I think Channel 2 is already going to drop it because everybody thinks they just go to ESPN or you see it online. And then television, movie theaters are going to go by the wayside. There's a lot of changes coming, and it's kind of sad for people my age because that's what we grew up with. But it's just the nature of development. So,
yeah, TV's just not as popular as it used to be. Like I would want to get my sports news on either here or Twitter, or just watch whatever's on the content. It's like TV can be good sometimes, but it's not as entertaining as it used to be.
Nah, it's people you follow. And there's different brands, you have the guys who cover Cam Inman, Matt Miyako, or beat writers. They don't ruffle feathers. They just cover the sport. And then you have Grant Cohn, guys like that, yourself, who, stir up some stuff. And, so there's different ways of covering it now, too. And it's not for everybody, but there's something out there for everybody. So you might not like one way, but there's other things you can do and follow.
There's difference, yeah.
Make it interesting, yeah.
So who do you got winning the Super Bowl since it's not the Niners playing this way?
Oh, boy. That's going to be an interesting Super Bowl. The magic tricks of Mahomes to the steadiness of Jalen Hurts and that defense. And Mahomes, we'll see how that high ankle sprain, he's got 2 weeks to get it better, but his mobility is going to be cut short, and they're going to, they put pressure on him from the outside in and make it tough for him to move. So I haven't really thought it through yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia wins this year. They just make it look so easy, and I think they played their worst game against the 49ers. Jalen Hurts makes it look so easy. Their defense is so stout, and I don't know. I just have a feeling like it's their year. It's almost like a Jalen Hurts payback. He got run out of Alabama. Nobody thought he was going to be a player at this level. And he's like, oh, yeah, watch this. And a lot of sports is that, proving people wrong. So my whole career was that. Oh, you can't play in the NFL. Oh, really? Watch this. Oh, you can't work in the San Francisco market. It's the number 4 market. Oh, really? Watch this. So it's a lot of that in the league. But I wouldn't be surprised if Philadelphia wins. I think everybody's going to pick Kansas City. So.
Yeah, I just think Philadelphia's got a really good D-line. Like you said, they got 4 guys with double-digit sacks, and they can get to the pressure, so that can be tough. But Mahomes is not a full 100%, but he could still extend the play a little bit.
And they really don't have a run game, Kansas City. Got to run the ball in the playoffs, because otherwise, if they know you're throwing every down and you let that defensive line of Philadelphia just tee off on the pass, they don't have a chance. So you got to show the run. And that's what Kyle did in the second half of, was it the Seattle game? No, the Dallas game. He kept pounding the rock, and it just wore him out, So big difference.
Yeah, exactly. There's a difference with the running game. If you can balance it, that's what makes it hard for the Eagles.
Right. And, with Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, they didn't do anything in that game. That one missed catch that Devontae got early in the game, but they weren't even involved in that game, and they still won it, So that's what I mean. I think the Niner defense did what they should have done. And had Brock stayed healthy, I think the Niners win that game.
I think that was the factor. Once he was out, his offense was never the same. It was just we couldn't pass the ball as much. Josh Johnson did okay, but he got hurt eventually.
You really can't afford to lose.
Yeah. Tough position to overcome. Especially at the third quarterback. That's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. On to the fourth. So
it's a roller coaster season. you would think when you lose your starting quarterback, the season's over. But then going to your first quarterback, that's a tougher challenge.
And nobody knew what they had in him. And everybody's like, whoa, Mr. Irrelevant. And that's what Brock was there to do. He was pissed off. He went so late in the draft, so he knew he could play at this level. So he was out to prove everybody wrong, and he did just that. Hopefully that's not the last we see of him.
I'm just hoping he becomes a lot better than he's ever been. I mean, he fits the system. I mean, I'm just like, as long as he gets back to the way he's playing, then he should be okay. But the recovery is going to take some time for that throwing.
Well, it'd be good for Trey Lance to get some reps. Trey should get every rep in the preseason. Just don't run him and keep him healthy. So he just needs repetitions. We still don't know what we have in him. You saw some flashes of greatness with his arm, and he'd be able to create more plays with his legs, but the sample size is just so small that you still don't know.
He's the unknown.
And they got to find out this year because they got to have a big payday next year for him. So it would be horrible to have 3 wasted number 1 picks, and then you cut him.
That's just wasted draft capital right there. But we got to see what the kid's made of. So we have to see if he can really step up and be the guy or not.
I know. So that's where they are right now.
I'm just hoping that Shanahan doesn't treat him like RG3, run him to the ground. I don't like that. Try to treat him like, give him some chances to throw the ball at least.
Yeah, exactly. So I think Kyle felt like, I finally found my guy in Brock, and now he's back to square one with Trey.
Yeah, it's the way how you treated RG3. You got Kirk eventually.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Good point.
You think you would have won Mac Jones?
I think Mac Jones is Brock Purdy.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, same guy, really. Kind of a game manager, had all these skilled players at Alabama. And, I think he could have. So, but Mac Jones is the stay in the pocket guy. And Purdy is really 2, but he has enough quickness to, and he had more arm angles because of playing baseball. He could throw it underhand. He could throw it sidearm. He could throw it 3/4. He could throw over the top. It's unusual to see that many arm angles, but that's the difference with a guy who played football and baseball, not basketball. So Kyle's at home right now just going, Jesus Christ. It killed him to lose his guy, Brock Purdy. Kills him to think that, okay, we've got to go back to Trey now. So there's a lot on his plate, and he needs to go away for a couple of weeks to Cabo or something, get his head straight, and then come back full speed ahead. So, and Brock needs to go ahead and do whatever he's going to do and get it done.
Get it done with it.
Yeah. So,
I mean,
so there we are.
I'm impressed by him. I mean, he's played a lot more like a veteran and he looks ready.
Really did. Yeah, and that's like we talked about. Those 4 years in college as a starter. Most kids, if you're at Alabama, you only get to start 1 or 2 years. You got to wait your turn. And a lot of these kids now are jumping into the portal because of I call it the participation trophy era. Well, wait a minute. I'm a freshman and I was a star in high school and I'm not starting in college. Nah, you got to wait your turn. And kids don't want to do it.
Go to a small college and make a name for yourself.
Yeah. Christian McCaffrey's younger brother is a quarterback. He's been on 4 teams in 4 years because he never gets to start. You got to wait your turn. Najee Harris, Pittsburgh running back, was at Alabama. He wanted to leave. He had to sit on the bench for 2 years, play special teams, and then he was all-world for the 2 years he got to play. So, and that's the difference. At Florida State, we had horrible years when I was there. We didn't have one winning season. Weren't on TV at all. And Alabama was my other choice. Had I gone there, I would have won 2 national championships and been a first-round pick. So I go to Florida State. Nobody sees me. I'm not drafted. We had 49ers had a scout down there, Neil Schmidt, saw me play in the Tangerine Bowl and a couple other games, and went back to Tony Rossano, the 49ers head of. He says, "You got to draft this kid. You got to sign him." So just takes one guy to give you that opportunity, and then it's up to you, like I said. But free agents don't get as many opportunities, even in training camp. You got a draft pick as a wide receiver. He's going to get all the chances in the game, you might get 5, he gets 20, and in your 5, you better make 3 catches. Nobody's going to notice you. So, not too many free agents make it big, and so it's a lot tougher road to hoe, so to speak.
Most of Shanahan's guys are either undrafted and they've been successful.
Yes. So he knows what he wants in his players, and with Robert Saleh, D'Amico took over the same defense. So they had the same players that they liked. They like these certain kind of players, linebackers that can run, defensive guys, bit bulky up the middle. They got to decide on Kinlaw, going to keep him around. I think first things first, you got to get a defensive coordinator and get your coaching staff together, and then get Brock Purdy in surgery. Those are the first 2 big things he's got to do.
That's the goal. To get a DC, but do you think any of the coaching staffs from an organization should get a promotion, like Chris Sarek or Daniel Bullock?
I think the defensive line coach would be the natural one to move up. So, but it's different when your offensive line and defensive line coaches are just kind of right there in the trenches. They don't see the scheme as well as other position coaches. A linebacker coach sees the defensive line and the secondary behind him. So it's a difference. And then Vic Fangio, like I said, prefers a 3-4. You can't bring somebody in that prefers one defense and try to run another one.
It just doesn't work that way. Shanahan wants to run a 4-3. Let's stick with the same thing.
Yeah, just stick with what he's got for another couple of years while he's got this Super Bowl talent. So hiring in-house would be the way to go. I'm just not sure who's there for him. Because you go from defensive line to coordinator, you got to call defenses during the game, which you don't as a defensive line coach. I always thought offensive line coaches didn't make good head coaches or defensive line coaches because they it doesn't see the whole picture. Like Tom Sula, everybody loved him as a defensive line coach, but he just wasn't a head coach.
Not with the way.
Yeah, so it's a big difference. So a lot on their plate. It was a great season. Found out a lot about a lot of different players, and now you just move on to the next year. It's just so tough because it's so brutal. A 20-game season like they had, preseason games. It's just so hard on your body, physically, mentally, everything. So, but a great run. We'll just say that.
It's a great run with the roller coaster season. We had a Cinderella story with Brock Purdy. This could have been the making of a Walt Disney movie, but that came up short.
I know Brock Purdy is almost like a Disney character, even with his name.
And he looked like a teenager too.
He does. You see him anywhere, they go, that's Brock Purdy, the 49. No, it's not. He's 12 years old. So, but the players love him. And that's an issue too with Trey. And it happens with Joe Montana and Steve Young. Everybody had a favorite. So, and it's kind of the same thing with Brock. Come out of nowhere like that, and oh my God, everybody rallied around him. He's like Rudy from Florida, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And so he's as popular in that locker room as any quarterback in there right now.
He's already earning the respect from all the teammates, and they already seen what they saw from training camp from there on. They seen something with him. So they. Right.
And he was going against the number 1 defense in the league as a scout team leader. So he was seeing everything he needed to see by just practicing. And he took advantage of that, got better, and had the season he had. So what was he, 7-1, 8-1? So it's just unbelievable.
I mean, 7-1 as a starter. You include the playoffs. He was undefeated throughout the regular season. 2 playoff wins. That's not too bad. You can put your head up high. Not bad for a last pick in the draft. I mean, the fact that he took us this further can tell you that maybe he makes a strong case for being the starter. But in order for that to happen, he's going to have to recover. So that's going to take a lot of opportunities for Trey Lance. And like you said, we might have to still bring in a veteran quarterback. Probably like at a cheaper deal, like you said. That would make sense. I don't know about drafting a quarterback. Maybe you draft one to see what you get, but I think you want a veteran.
Nah, I don't think you draft one now because you got 2 young guys now, So, and Purdy, I think Kyle feels like he's his guy for a decade, and Trey would be. I think they would trade him and then maybe draft somebody else. So,
I mean, that would be the approach, but Shanahan just closed the door on Jimmy G, so Can we believe what Shanahan says? Maybe he might make a call back later and say, hey, I'm just kidding. We'll bring you back.
They might. It makes sense, but they know what they have in him, and he knows the offense. And the players love him too.
So it'll be hard to
it'll be
to replace him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So time will tell.
Time will tell. Yeah, man. But it must have been a really great ride for this team. But going forward, man, we have to see how this offseason goes. Get a new DC, see what happens with the quarterback situation, and fix some pieces here and there.
It's not a whole lot. It sounds like a lot, but compared to other teams, it's not a lot.
Very little.
So it's more your depth now than your starters.
Yeah, quality depth chart. Yeah.
Right.
But hey, man, definitely appreciate you on the show, man. We've been going on pretty well, man. But hey, for anybody else that's not too familiar with Mike Shumann, this guy has done it all. He was a player in the NFL, played at Florida State, and he did broadcast for 30+ years.
Still top 10 all time at Florida State, 45 years later.
Wow.
Well, I think it was 135 passes and I was a 4-year starter also, and which would be like 250 now. So anyway, yeah, it was quite a ride.
Yeah, it was definitely quite a ride, man. But it was nice to have you on the show, bro. Maybe down the road I can get you back on again, man. But it was fun.
I appreciate it, man. I enjoy what you're doing. I see all of you guys. I kind of follow you, so it's been a lot of fun to watch you guys grow up in the business, be a fan, and be able to have something to say like this. So brings a little different perspective than knucklehead sportscasters, trying to look pretty and act like they know what they're talking about. My experienced fans sometimes know more than sportscasters.
Some do, yeah.
So, and I think you're one of them.
I mean, I played O-line and D-line.
CG Ruthless.
I come with the attitude. I've actually started to
your attitude to stay around. So I heard this in the gym the other day. I said, that's the greatest line. He says, yeah, he was a little bit of a problem, but he outplayed his attitude. So they kept him. And I said, oh, God, that's perfect. So keep outplaying your attitude, buddy, and keep up the good work.
Oh, definitely. Thank you, man. And as for everybody else, man, thanks for tuning in. Mike Shumann, the legend. He's a great person and definitely a good contributor to the Niners. Like he said, the first ring's always the first memory for the team, and you were a part of that.
Nothing like the first time you do anything.
Yeah, man. And as always for everybody else, man, CG Ruthless Sports is out. And Mike Shumann's out too. Peace, man. But